Welcome back to the Bold Podcast. I'm Todd Birch, and I'm thrilled to be your guide on this inspiring journey of personal growth and leadership. Together with my guests, we'll dive into transformational stories, uncovering how small, intentional changes can create massive positive results in your life. From overcoming challenges and setting impactful goals to building lasting habits and living with confidence, health, and positivity, we'll explore it all. And if you're ready to embrace a growth mindset and unlock the best version of yourself, then let's spark that transformation today. Today's guest is John Geraghty, an optimal performance coach, speaker, and author of the Prism of Perspective. John's journey to becoming a sought-after leader in his personal and professional growth was shaped by his own life-threatening challenges, including overcoming alcoholism. Through his resilience, he reshaped his health, mindset, and definition of success. Now John helps seasoned business leaders align their decisions, relationships, and well-being with a long-term vision of fulfillment and impact. As a creator of fitness presence, he is redefining how we approach exercise, making it more effective and injury-free. John's mission is to inspire others to tap into their full potential, cultivate deeper connections, and step into a life of purpose, joy, and impact. Listeners, get ready for an inspiring episode on how to tap into your full potential. John, welcome to the Bolt Podcast, my friend.
Thank you so much, Todd. I'm so excited to be here with you. We've had an opportunity. You were on my podcast, and I've also had an opportunity to listen to quite a few of yours, and love the work you're doing. I love your heart and where you're coming from. So I'm really excited for this conversation.
Yeah, man, it's great to have you on the show. Thank you for joining early. Most of my West Coast guests, are much later in the day. I'm a morning person. This is when I am like at my best. So I appreciate you jumping on because I know this is super early for you, but I have to imagine, I think you're an early riser.
I'm an East Coaster.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I'm an East Coaster. So yeah, I've been up for a few hours by now.
Yeah. Good. So yeah, you and I are so aligned, right? When we talked, and that's why I wanted to have you on the show. I have so much respect for what you're doing and the intentionality that you bring into everything that you do, I think is really powerful. So I'm excited to get into this, John. So to kick things off, just tell us a little bit about these challenges, this life-threatening challenge that you endured, and how did this really influence your life and becoming the leadership coach that you are today?
Well, thank you for that. I think it's really helpful to think back at how did it go off the rails? Like, why did it go off the rails? What was alcohol providing for me? And I started drinking at 14 years old. And up until that time in my life, I had my family, my family dynamics, my parents divorced when I was pretty young. My father was completely out of my life. And, so my mom was very loving, but, we were living in a space where stuff was starting to change. And so when I went from being like an excellent student and pretty athletic and everything, and between 8th and 9th grade is really where my life seemed to crumble. And it seems odd, but like that summer, and right at the beginning of that school year, I went from always felt like I was a facade, right? I was an imposter, but I was an imposter that was having success. And so I didn't really believe in what I was doing in myself, but I was still creating a lot of great outcomes. And then over the summer, I get really bad cystic acne, like 1 of 100 people or thereabouts, probably get it, whatever, so pretty bad. And I went from being a pretty attractive kid that had lots of cute little girls and to a person that, I found to be hideous looking, right? And then I went from being kind of like would have been the best student in my middle school. And the day that high school started, I met in class the kid that will ultimately become our valedictorian in high school. And our teacher in our social studies class gave us a semester assignment. And it was, I forget what it was, but what I do remember is he turned his in the next day and it was completed. And I looked at it and I was like, wow, I've never done anything like that. And so all of a sudden, like, I wasn't really that cute. Maybe I wasn't really that smart. And then in PE class, I'd been the fastest kid in my middle school. And then James Shanks beat me in the 50-yard dash. So everything, like, I think I had been holding on to this, like, I'm the best. Didn't really believe it, but the results were kind of showing up that way. And then all of a sudden, like immediately everything collapsed. And about 3 months later, I got introduced to alcohol and I blacked out the first time I ever drank. Blacked out, got drunk the first time I ever drank and did that for 15 years. So all through high school, all through college and the beginning of my working years, I was a functioning alcoholic in that I would show up. I didn't perform really well in high school. I didn't perform really well in college. And so everything was falling apart. And I tried to get sober a bunch of different times. But right around when I was just turned 29, I'm at October birthday, right at New Year's, I'm looking at my life and I'm looking, I have some skills, right? I'm a pretty good communicator. I had some success professionally in sales, but I was looking at it, I'm like, no matter what, if I keep drinking, I couldn't deny the fact that I was going to end up in jail, kill someone in a car accident, just totally sabotage my life. And so I knew I had to get sober. And at that time, Anthony Robbins was just coming out with his Personal Power series, and my roommate had purchased it. And so I listened to it, and there was a section in it on, I think he calls it the Dickens pattern. I've kind of used it. I call it the Scrooge pattern because it's really about Scrooge. And it's the idea that if you think about Scrooge, right, the way that they shifted his behavior is they had him look at his past, his present, and his future, right? The ghosts came. And they showed him, like, here's where this behavior has cost you in the past. Here's where it's costing you in the future. This is what it's going to cost you. And so that's literally used that pattern to challenge, to really look at where alcohol was taking me. And we were always moving toward pleasure and away from pain. So up until that time, even though there was destruction in the alcohol in my life, I still, on whole, saw it as a pleasure, right? As something that would relieve the insecurity or the discomfort. And I had to switch it so that it felt really so bad. The idea of like, okay, I'm going to end up in prison or under a bridge or having killed some, really bad stuff, which I wasn't. That's probably what would have happened. And so once the association became so strong, then I was able to begin to put together days, right? And because the Anthony Robbins stuff was so impactful, I leaned into, I didn't do AA, I leaned into personal development. And since that time, I've read a book a week for 30 years, essentially.
Oh, gosh.
Of personal development, communication, relationships, organizational, whatever it is that I've felt the need. But I began to be a learner. And it was I think I was also trying to make up for the 15 years that I wasn't, right? Because I kind of blew off school. I got through, but me and the dean's list were not that familiar with one another. So I began to be a learner and I got really interested. And what got me into coaching, I think eventually was, some people are like, people don't change. I'm like, no, people change. I became a different person. I transformed my own life and it changed me so much. And the reward was so great that it began to be something that I felt like I really needed and wanted to share with people. And so I got into the financial services industry, which, was a career that I was building. In that industry, I had a period of time, just a short, brief period of time where a bunch of clients, 3 clients had big life-changing events that didn't have to do with their money. It had to do with the rest of the way they were living their lives. I thought, hey, maybe I can expand what I'm doing. I thought I'd do both. But I was just, once I started coaching and developing, it was the thing that lit me up. And I was like, you know what? I got a long time to go here in my career. I'm going to do what lights me up. And that's really how I got into coaching and development. And I'm a learner. I love to learn. As obviously I read a book a week. And then what that allows me to do is, if you're really a learner, what you learn to teach. Right. I don't learn to keep it inside. I learn to share it just so that, those those natural attributes that I was suppressing so much came into play. And, it's been a really fun journey. I feel like I'm living authentically doing this work. So thanks. Yeah, it's kind of how I got started.
Man, thank you, John, for being vulnerable and sharing that intimate details. Wow, what a story. I mean, good for you. I mean, kudos to you for not a lot of people will on their own make that choice. We all have the potential, the capacity, the innate ability, right, to change, evolve, but you still have to make that choice. I do believe in a higher power and the fact that that book, that message, right, was brought into your life. And sounds like it had a tremendous impact on you. You had to make the choice, right, to make that next step, but that came into your life and it sparked curiosity in your mind. It said, what if I did things a little bit differently? What would my life look like?
Right.
And look where you're at today, brother. I mean, and I love what you said about reading. I never really thought about it like that, but that is powerful. I'm going to quote you on that. You learn to share. And, it's interesting. You and I, and we talked about this on your show, we have almost identical parallels. You're just a little bit older than me, but I mean, I went through the same thing about the same age. And interesting enough, went down kind of a similar path, and it's interesting how we find our path and our journey and our purpose in life. I think the most effective and powerful coaches are ones that have been through some trauma or some really life-changing event like you and I have. Because I think you have to go through something to really build that resilience and that deep empathy for people, and to be able to share that in a vulnerable way opens yourself up, get you out of your comfort zone. And people can look at that and say, wow, this guy is real. He's authentic. He's been there. So I think he can help me. Right. And I don't know, it's just really powerful, John. Thank you for doing that and sharing that with us.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, curiosity. I think, when we're curious both about what maybe we're consuming information on the outside, but really curious about ourselves. Right. And we take the time to think about, like, what do I really believe in? What are my beliefs? Not something I, here, believe this, right? But really looking at your life and say, what do I believe in? What's my purpose? Like, why am I here? Mm-hmm. One of the things I like to think about is, like, if you were God, right? If you were God and you were responsible for creating values that were emanating out into the universe, what values would you choose? Because that's essentially what we're doing, right? We're living our values. We are a center that puts out into the world, right? It radiates out into the world what we believe in. And if we're living those values, we are in effect creating more and more, kind of like Gandhi said, right? Be the change you want to see in the world. And I think curiosity, taking the time to know who you are and what you believe in, allows you to be, the name of my company is Courageous Authenticity. And I think it's because if you know who you are and you've done the work, you can be courageously authentic, because you're not there by accident, right? It's not, if many people are going to see the world differently, right? Everybody sees the world differently. But if you are solid on what you believe because you've done the work, it's okay that other people may judge you, or, okay, they're judging you because their values are different than yours. That's okay. Right. But if you know what yours are, then you can really lean in. And I found that to be a really great place where, curiosity has played a huge role.
Yeah, absolutely. We always say at our office, we have core values, which we really believe in and stand tall. At the end of the day, we just want to hang our hat right on the rack and feel good about how we handled ourselves, the relationships, our clients, the work that we're doing. If we do that, there's nothing else we can do. We'll feel good about it. So the work's going to be there tomorrow, but aligning with those core values is what we set out to do. And John, this is a great segue into the Prism of Perspective. I mean, this has been kind of your life's work, and it's very unique. And I love learning about it on your show. And I really want to spend some time here because this is a really cool model. So if you can, take us through what the Prism of Perspective is all about. And it starts with your life and your beliefs, right? Your mindset.
It really does, yeah.
And then this was a book. You have a podcast about this, one-to-one coaching. Like, this is really the center of who you are and what you're doing. So here, man, the floor is yours. Take us through, educate us.
So there's a quote that I love, and Robert Box, I believe he's a English philosopher and mathematician, and he said, all models are wrong. Some are useful. I hope Prism of Perspective is useful, and we'll send out the graphics on it so people can take a look at it if they really like. But if you've ever seen the Dark Side of the Moon album cover, which most people have.
Yeah, that was the first thing when I saw that. I said, oh, Pink Floyd.
It's Dark Side of the Moon. So the idea is, like, if you think about how light works, right? Like, white light goes into a prism and then it's refracted and it pulls out all the different colors of the rainbow, but all those colors are actually inside the white light. And so if you think about our lives, I look at the prism having three sides, right? So our life comes at us like white light. And all of the opportunities, everything that's in the world is coming at us in this way. And then we're going to filter it through the three sides of the prism, which I call our beliefs, our energy, and our presence. And so the beliefs, the most powerful influence in your life is your identity beliefs, because they act as a thermostat for your life, right? You're not going to act significantly outside of what you believe is true. And I know that you do a lot of visualization work, you do a lot of affirmation work. Those are the things when you get clear, right? You're affirming what you believe to be true about yourself. And so, you never want to say anything about yourself that you don't want to be true. And you do want to say about yourself what you do want to be true. And it can be aspirational. I mentioned the name of my company is Courageous Authenticity. When I named it, there's still growth, right? But I mean, I was not as courageously authentic as I wanted to be, but it was a value that I had. I was like, I want to live a courageously authentic life. And so, like you said, visualize, what does that look like? How do you affirm that into your life? And so you create these identity beliefs, which to me are your life story, kind of your hero's journey. How'd you end up here? You overcame all these different things. I shared a little my hero's journey, right? Your purpose from where you are today, right? It has to continue to evolve. So I'm 62. And so a lot of people have this vision, especially business owners and entrepreneurs and things along those lines. And maybe they built the business that they wanted and they have a clear vision for that, but they might find themselves at 62 really unclear about what they're going to do next. So, like, what is the impact you want to have based on your current skills, talents, gifts, passions? How do you want to employ those to make a difference in your life? So you can think about, okay, I want to arrange my energy and my attention in a way that's on purpose, living on purpose, right? Not accidentally. I'm living with intention. I'm living on purpose. Then you think about, what are the values, right? So we talked a little bit about that. How do you want to show up? What's most important for you to emanate into the world? If there was tons of that energy, if there was tons of that in the world, and you were trying to create the ideal world, what would that be? So now I'm going to live on purpose, and this is how I'm going to show up as I try to create that outcome. You get clear on the vision. I like to think of it from a few different sections. I like to think about the impact I have with my relationships, my family, the community, professionally, but also me. Like, how am I evolving? What skills am I developing? What's going on physically, right? I want to think about when I'm 75, I want to be physically functional. When I'm 85, I want to be physically functional. I want to be able to do the things I want to do. So having that vision of an 85-year-old still being able to crush it makes you make different choices than if you're somebody that's 62 and says, I'm in pretty good shape for my age, right? Or, I don't even know what that means. Like, because you really shouldn't be diminishing as long as you're doing not overwhelming stuff. That's the other thing. We can stay physically vital by just doing the basics, right? There's biohacking galore out there, but I'm like, okay, 90% of it. Are you getting enough sleep and rest? Are you eating food that's nutritious and whole and gives you all your vitamins and micronutrients? And I supplement. I think supplementation's good.
Yeah.
I also take hormones because I'm 62 and I find that I live better that way, And are you exercising enough that you're challenging your body? You're creating a physical environment that your body has to continue to be ready for. In a way, our body is a representation. Our current level of fitness is a representation of the environment that we're forcing it to live in. And so if your environment is like you're sitting back on a chair clicking, you are in perfect shape to do that, right? You come home from work, you sit down on the chair and you're like, okay, yeah, I can't really walk very far. Why would your body give you the capability of doing something you never ask it to do? On the flip side, if you consistently ask yourself, your body, say, hey, you know what? We need this strength. We need this cardiovascular. We need balance. We need coordination. We need flexibility, right? If you consistently tell your body, like, okay, in our life, this is stuff we're going to need, then your body will continue to hold on to it and most likely continue to expand in its capacity for a really long time. And so I think, that's good. And when you think about the beliefs, when you start to believe those things, you start to see opportunities for it, right? And so the beliefs about yourself, next are beliefs about others. How do you see others? Because we're in a collaborative world. And if you have judgment about different groups of people and you're starting to separate yourself, Martin Luther King said, you can't influence people for whom you have contempt. Right. So think about like, how are you seeing different groups of people? Are you looking at how you're different, or are you looking for opportunities to work together and collaborate? Right. And then finally, how do you see the world? Is it a dangerous place? Are there scarce resources? Or is that just a story we've been sold? And at some level, the brain's wired to look for danger. So, but if you flip that and start to say, we live in a really safe world, think about all the things that happen where someone doesn't get hurt. Nobody, there isn't a crime there. It's way more safe, right? Magnitudes. You think about abundance, even any person listening to this podcast is living with a level of abundance most likely that kings didn't have. Regardless of the amount of gold they had or whatever they had, they did not have the abundance to impact the world, create the world, connect with the world, travel the world that we have. So, the stories we tell ourselves, to me, so many people are like, no, don't tread on me. Like somehow or another we're being tread upon. Like top few percent of people in the richest country in the world, and life is horrible. And it's a terrible thing. I believe if we flip it and have gratitude, which I know is another one of your big things.
There we go.
Be grateful. Because your gratitude shifts what you're looking for. You look for what's great in the world.
Right.
You look for, what is that? And so that's the beliefs piece. Energy piece is, how do you generate energy? And I look at it three ways: fundamental, psychological, and flow. Fundamental is the things we talked about: exercise, nutrition, sleep, rest. The middle part, positive psychology practices. We talked about affirmation, gratitude, forgiveness, compassion, visualization, breath work, meditation, mindfulness, right? Journaling. All of those things are tools. I like to think of all of those as like clubs in your golf bag.
Yeah.
And, you should probably be somewhat adequate at all of them, but there's probably a handful of them you want to play all the time, right? You probably play your 3-wood all the time. You play your 5-iron or whatever it is. You want to have some go-tos that when you get anxious or you get frustrated or whatever, you're like, oh, I know what to do. Let me change the way I'm breathing. Let me change the way I'm standing. Let me get really mindful and be in the present moment, right? What are the practices that you have access to? What tools have you developed so that you can really thrive? And then the next piece is another area that I love, is really about how do you live in flow? Because there's a huge difference between how we show up based on whether we're in flow or we're in overwhelm. And flow, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it's defined as a state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. Right. And so when we think about that, it's like we're tapping into our greatest resources. And you ever show up somewhere and like your state's just not right? You can't even think of anything. You're like, oh, my name's Todd. What's my last name? Right. And then other times you almost are amazed by what you're capable of. Well, the difference is how well you're tapping into your highest and best aspects of your capabilities, right? Always cognitive capabilities. Even physical stuff is cognitive. The muscles are there, but the brain and the neural system is what's making everything move. But if we're in flow in that space, right at the edge of our capabilities without going into overwhelm, we tap into a cocktail of neurochemicals, neurotransmitters, dopamine, oxytocin,
right?
Anandamide, serotonin, endorphins, right? So it's almost like we're taking this super drug peak performance cocktail. But it's perfectly designed to allow us to optimize our lives. And so when you're thinking about energy, are you in flow? Did you find that space where you're challenged, but not overwhelmed, not bored, right? You don't want to be bored because there's not enough.
Right.
You don't want to be overwhelmed. You want to be right in that Goldilocks space. And so being intentional about finding Goldilocks and building it into your life through the way you intentionally calendar your day, calendar your week, calendar your month, calendar your year. Think about, I want to be putting in times where I have rapt attention. I'm focused exactly on what I want to create. It's got all of my attention. I'm going to go hard and I'm going to give myself a little recovery time and I'm going to do it again. And those things give you the energy to go bring that vision that you had to life. Last piece is presence, kind of the Viktor Frankl space between stimulus and response, right? And so when you think about that, you say, okay, I want to be present, and kind of the mindfulness practice. A lot of these things work this way, right? So the beliefs are empowered by the practices you have down here. And so is your presence, right? If you have a good mindfulness practice, breathwork practice, something that might trigger you otherwise, you're like, oh, that's cool. I can get back into my state so that you can act in alignment. I think it's like, I think of it as like self-awareness, situational awareness, and then influence. And so self-awareness to me is understanding what are my identity beliefs and how am I showing up right now? How do I bring them together? Right. So all of a sudden I get triggered and, here's how I want to behave. Here's how I'm about to behave. If I'm present enough, I can go, oh, let me pull those together.
Right.
And even if I misbehave over here, I hopefully have the integrity to say, hey, you know what? I responded to you in a way that, was out of alignment. I didn't mean that. And I came at you too hard, so you may even mess it up in that present moment if you're not right, but then you can recover, right? Situational awareness is paying attention. Like, hey, I just did this. How'd that person respond? Right? How did it hit them? What's important to them? Right? Because we're going to do this collaboratively. If we're going to do anything that really matters, we're going to do that. And when we understand our beliefs, our energy, and our presence, it allows us to live our lives as creators and partners and collaborators. If we don't, we end up looking at the world as if it's dangerous, it's against us, people are against us, and we live our lives as victims or whatever. And so the rainbow part of this, the different colors are, how are you showing up? Low level is victim, fighter, negotiator, contributor, and then you get into collaboration, partnership, and co-creation as you move up. And it's really event energy vibrational lift. So that's kind of that. And so through the Prism of Perspective, the book is a story about someone who kind of goes through that self-awakening. It's like a self-development novel, I would call it.
Yeah.
The podcast, we really look at people's lives through that. And I encourage everybody to kind of look at your life and think about, like, what are your beliefs? Are they really empowering you? Are you telling yourself a story that gives you access to your highest and best so you can create what you want? Are your practices around foundational energy, positive psychology practices, and even scheduling, like, are you getting yourself to the place where you can really rock? And are you really accepting responsibility to be present, to live in alignment with your values? Because it's cool to have them stated, but if you allow yourself to act outside of your vision, it's important. Viktor Frankl says, like, the most important thing is a space between stimulus and response where we can choose our behaviors and our attitude. Right? So regardless of what's happening, we can always choose that and get back in alignment. And those things together, I think, are really great tools to help people continue to grow and develop and become who they want to be. And that's you're right. I'm passionate about it. That's the work I love to do. And that's really a lot of the framework about the coaching and development that I do, really looking at those different elements. And I think of them all as like little dials that you can dial in tighter. Like, are you dialed in tight on your identity beliefs in a way that they are compelling and inspiring and clear? And you know what that means? And are you looking at how you see other people? And are you, like, I talk about compassion as a practice. I used to do this compassion meditation where you kind of start off with yourself and your family and you build your way out being compassionate to, and you, over a few minutes, you're like all of a sudden compassionate with the whole world. Well, I was doing that practice and I was realizing, I'm like, okay, I'm kind of lying to myself because I'm have judgment about this group and I got judgment about this group. And so what I had to do is really like figure out, like, where were my judgments? Where were my separations? And think about, okay, how do I practice compassion specifically in that area? And think about, how do I move from, if you think about energy, right? So you might have really, really, really low energy with someone, a hatred, a contempt, dislike, pity, sympathy, empathy, compassion, and love would kind of be an escalating scale. And so figure out, like, with this group that I'm prejudging, where are they for me? And how do I figure out, okay, how do I incrementally move upstream? Those are the things that we work on a lot in our work. And the people that I love to work with are, successful business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals who are mature, kind of 45 to 65 range, that want to continue to thrive, want to challenge the belief system that, we're at the end, right? This is a period of my life, I believe, that we should really be crushing it. We have more capabilities, more skills, more experience, more insight than we've ever had. This is not the time to get off the playing field. This is the time to dive in and think about, what do you really want to create in every aspect of your life, so that we can make that happen.
Ooh, man, John, that was incredible, dude. Oh my gosh. Wow.
Thank you.
That was, you and I'm all about all that stuff. Like we talk about all those things and just kind of micro pieces. Man, that's a hell of a model. And we're going to show this. We'll have it in the video as well. Yep. So when you send the graphic, and we'll have links to all your stuff in the show notes.
Great.
I
Thank you.
absolutely love this, John. I absolutely love it. I can tell you're passionate about it. I believe in all of this as well. We talk a lot about this on the show. I think for a lot of listeners, it's just about getting started. So
Mm.
hearing this sounds like a lot. And I love the golf metaphor. I'm not a golfer
Neither am I.
for a lot of reasons. I prefer more movement and more activity. So let me play some pickleball or go out on my kayak or whatever, but I love the metaphor, and it's a very difficult sport, and it takes a lot of different tools, right?
Mhm.
A lot of education and knowledge about each one of the clubs and the weather right. There's all these different things, and it can feel overwhelming. And that's how a lot of people see personal growth. It's like, wow, John, that was great. I absolutely love that. But man, how do I get started? So, and I know you work, like you said, and I love how intentional you are. You're like, I'm working with 45 to 65, that 20-year span. Like, this is my group. And I absolutely love that. But what if there's somebody who's maybe younger than that, that is struggling? They have the curiosity. So they are open, right, to some degree, to at least exploring this. How does somebody get started? Like, what would be a first? We talk a lot about just making a small shift, just getting started, right? Don't be
Mhm.
afraid of all this. Just get started with one thing. What would you recommend?
I think the recommendation is somewhat bespoke based on where the individual person is, right? Are they really having challenges around their energy? Are they having challenge around self-confidence? Are they having challenges around their relationships? So, but what I think that is important that you're bringing up is you don't have to you don't address it all at the same time, right? You really think about, okay, over the next 90 days, where do I want to grow? What is the area that I'd like to get better at? And one is kind of doing an audit, figuring out like, where are you and being honest,
Do a
right?
life audit. Yep, I have
Do
a
a life
tool for
audit.
that.
Look, yeah, yeah. So, pick up Todd's tool around, how do you audit yourself in these different areas? Give yourself an evaluation. Where are you on a scale from I'm horrible at this, I'm in a bad space, all the way to I'm totally crushing it. And then looking at it and saying, okay, where is the place that if I were to make a change, it would have the most significant impact in helping me create the life that I want? And for me, one of the most important things I've learned is all growth is incremental and compounding. And so wherever you are, all you have to do is challenge yourself a little bit at the edge, become a little better. So if you say, you know what, I don't really, I'm kind of always like looking out in the wind to figure out like who people want me to be
Hmm.
rather than looking internally, then I would say, okay, it's probably important for you to think about really what are your values, what if you looked at the world and you looked at all the different things in your society, where would you like to have some impact? And just get directionally clear about your purpose and get directionally clear about what that would look like. And think about, okay, what are my gifts? Like, what things am I going to use? Because I know a lot of us don't recognize our natural gifts because they come so easy to us.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't really think like, oh, this is something that really adds a lot of value. But look in your life and think about, how have you solved challenges? How have you overcome obstacles? What were the gifts you were using? And get kind of clear on who you are. This is what my purpose is. This is what I'd like to create. Here's who I want to be. Here's this. And then think about, okay, now I'm going to take those and put those to use on an ongoing basis. And what is wonderful is that there's a long tail of human development. In other words, we keep getting better and better and better, but we get a lot of it at the beginning, right? The difference between being in the bottom quartile as it relates to someone who understands who they are, what they value, what their gifts are, et cetera, and even just kind of moving up to like being in the middle of the pack, huge difference. And then you just take that from there. So think about like my story when I was 29 and I was alcoholic, right? My next steps weren't like, cool, I'm put the drink down, I'm rocking the world, right? It was, I'm a little better. And for me, dependability was a bad issue, right? Dependability to self and others, right? Integrity on what I said, my word. So gradually build your confidence, right? When you hold commitments to yourself, all of a sudden you're like, I'm a little bit more dependable than I used to be.
Mm.
And then it allows you to kind of build from there. So I think that's critically important. I think you have to have energy. So energy practices, I would say, you know, you don't have to get really rigid with anything. You can move there incrementally. Begin to move, right? If you're not really moving, begin to challenge your body, awaken your body. One of the things that I say that I think is, I say it intentionally to get somebody to like look at you like you're a jerk. I'm like, man, I love my body. And I'm pretty fit and all that stuff. But what I love is that I do love my body, right? I treat my body in a great way. I love it. Just like I love my wife and I treat my wife really well and I love my kids. So do you have a loving relationship with your body? Because your body will love you back. Your body, whatever you do, you're maybe familiar with the saying, you can't outgive the universe, right? So you can't out contribute to your body. When you start to do things, little things, eat whole foods and nutritiously in proper amounts and do some movement that you're awakening your body, all of a sudden you have a relationship with this thing you're going to take everywhere that is now rewarding you in every second. So I think those are, I look at it, again, I think the identity beliefs piece, like understand who you are, spend some time with that, and you can write your stuff down, but it's all dynamic. Like whatever you come up with today, it should continue to change. Your purpose is going to continue to evolve as you understand more. Your vision is going to continue to evolve. You're going to have a different understanding of what is it that I really value. This is not going in stone. This is an introductory, just getting clear on what it is you want to do and how do you want to move. And the same with the exercise piece, right? I exercise every day and I have for a long time. I'm very consistent there. And but what I do is I just make sure that I'm using my body. My bar to get over, by the way, to say I exercise is that I worked out for 15 minutes. Like, who can't do that? It's 1% of your day. Literally 14 minutes and 24 seconds is 1% of a day. So it's 1% of your day. And if you take 1% of your day and invest it in this thing, it will pay you back for the other 99%. The return on investment is so huge. What I think is really important is recognize wherever you are, your body's going to adapt to the environment that you put it in. And you don't want to go, like, say you're here physically and you want to end up here, right? You want to end up here. Today's exercise should actually be like right here, right? It doesn't have to be like where you think you're going to end up. Just gradually compound. And I think that's true physically. I think that's true whether you're trying to learn technical skills or communication skills or how to be comfortable in relationships or high stakes conversations. Begin where you are. Only place you can begin. I actually heard you quoting Lao Tzu the other day, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. All of our journeys begin from one step. And I think that right before that, in the Tao, it says something along the lines like, know where you are, right? So your journey from 1,000 steps starts with just one step, but 1,000 miles starts with one step, but it also starts where you are. You don't ever get a Google map that says, here's where you want to go, and they don't bother to figure out where you are. So start where you are and then incrementally compound and grow in ways that light you up. And think about how much fun growth is, right? It doesn't have to be this. Think about like, this is you creating yourself. Like Michelangelo and the statue of David, you're familiar with that story?
Yeah, I was actually getting ready to talk about it. So go ahead and go for it.
Well, you share yours.
Yeah, we all have everything that we need. Like marble, we're just chipping away at it, right? To find, right? Less is more. And that's the beautiful thing. We all have curiosity. We all have the innate ability to change. We just need to make the simple choice to look underneath the cover, right? And do an audit. And don't be afraid. A lot of people are afraid of what they're going to find. You are doing some good things. So celebrate those wins first. You are an amazing person. And yes, you probably have some things you got to work on too. But that's what this is all about. I do the life audit every 6 months. I just want to make sure I'm staying aligned with who I want to be, right? To myself, but also to others. And I think an important piece here that a lot of people don't realize, and we're talking a lot about ourselves, right? Working on ourselves. But here's the thing, guys, like we're working on ourselves. It affects every single relationship in our life. When you are the best version of yourself, yes, you're going to be a better person, but you're going to be a better husband, a better wife, a better spouse, a better partner. You're going to have better relationships with your kids, better relationships with your colleagues. You're going to be better in your profession because you're going to have more clarity. You're going to be able to solve problems better. You're going to work at a higher performance. Like, there are so many benefits to this. You just need to start, and you have what you need, right?
Absolutely. I love the way that you say that, you have what you need. And when you think about personal development, like you said, call it personal development. It's like self-actualization, right? That's how Maslow talks about it. Like thinking about, and self-actualization is a continuous thing. I don't know. You're not going to land on I self-actualized. It's a process, right? And so wherever you are, just continually evolving into like, who are you meant to be? I saw something recently. It said something along the lines like aging is the gift we get to finally become who we're meant to be, or something along those lines, right? And so aging and maturing, we're continually progressing, pulling off layers, right? The statue of David they're chipping away. Like David was in there. He didn't bring marble and glue it on. All of that was in there. And everything in your life masterpiece is in there. And what we're really thinking about is like, okay, what are the things that are keeping me from really showing up? A client of mine I was talking to yesterday who has done very well in so many ways for herself. And she said, one of the things that feels difficult is because she's expanded so much, sometimes she feels like she's almost dampening her light so that others don't feel insecure or threatened or judge her in a particular way.
Yep, I can relate to that.
And what I love, are you familiar with that quote by Marianne Williamson, Our Deepest Fear?
No.
I'm going to share it. I love it. It says, our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we're powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, talented, fabulous, and gorgeous? Actually, who are you not to be? You're a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We're all born to shine as children do. We're born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. And when we allow our light to shine, we unconsciously give others permission to do the same. When we're liberated from our fear, our presence automatically liberates others. And so what it's really saying, if you listen, in my interpretation of that, is it's our responsibility to continue to grow and to shine, right? To let the light shine, to like, if there's an alcoholic out there that's, been drinking for 15 years and they feel like, they lost it and they missed their chance. Hopefully my shining light says, you didn't. There's still great stuff ahead. Yogi Berra used to say, it's not over till the fat lady sings, right? And the fat lady doesn't sing for a really, really long time, right? The fat lady doesn't sing for a long time. So wherever you find yourself, and I know that I've had real doubts about what was going to happen for me in my life. If there's somebody out there listening that's struggling with that, that you can just incrementally compound great choices with lots of screw ups in between, right? I'm not at all going, and if you don't screw up at all again, everything's perfect. The number of times I screwed up from when I was 29 and got sober to today is countless, right? So many, that was a wrong turn. This was a wrong turn. But if you pay attention, just like a GPS, wrong turn, go this way. Wrong turn, go this way. We will compound and end up in an amazing place. And curiosity, I'm more excited today about what my future holds than I've ever been. And I don't know what that'll be, but I have ideas, I have purpose, I have vision, and it's going to go in that direction. And it will also change, right? That will change. And so all of those things are dynamic. And I think if we can let go of the feel like, we have to do this perfectly. We wherever we are is not the right place. Wherever you are is where you are. Like that self-audit, like jumping on a scale. No one ever got heavier because they jumped on a scale. They may have found out they weighed more than they thought they did, but finding out the truth doesn't change the truth. It just gives you a solid foundation from which to build.
Right.
And so,
where to start.
Let's do that work, get comfortable with it, and make this the adventure of your life. It is the adventure of your life. It's the evolving. It's make your life a masterpiece. Think of yourself as David. Right. And think about how am I going to continue to move in that direction?
Beautifully said, John. And it comes back to one of my favorite quotes by Robin Sharma. He says, The best time to plant a tree was 40 years ago. Well, that kind of sucks. But the next best time to plant a tree is today.
Right.
So maybe you didn't plant that tree when you were in your 20s. You can do it today. And like you, my friend, like I'm 54 and I am just getting into my groove, man.
Right.
I am really just finding myself and becoming the best version of myself. And I'm looking ahead at 20 years. And I want to keep doing that same thing. I want to see my grandchildren and I want to be out playing in the ocean with them, right? Living a vibrant life and being flexible and being able to move and to do all the things that I'm doing now. So you can start today. You can start today. You just need to make the choice to look under the sheet and say, who am I? Where am I at? Like John says, and just take one small thing. Journaling and gratitude practice to me are the two easiest. It's free. It costs no money. And it's that reflection point. Just reflect, right? And that's the audit. If you're journaling, you're starting to write about where you're at, how you're feeling, getting in tune with your emotions. And it's okay to do that. It's a good, healthy exercise. It doesn't mean that you're pushing off all the negative emotions. You're just being more attuned. What are the glasses you're wearing right now? What is the lens through which you see the world? Because that's all the beliefs. That's your mindset. Just be curious. Really, just be curious. We all had curiosity at one point in our lives when we were a kid. We just need to ignite that spark and tap back into it.
Yeah, curious and enthusiasm, right? The enthusiasm actually, I guess, entheos means God within, right? So it's like spirit within, however you want to call it, right? And so like have that enthusiasm that you can transform. So I want to give so anyway, I got sober at 29, but even though I was doing a bunch of different things, and even though I've always had pretty good understanding around exercise and nutrition and things along those lines, when I was in a career, I switched from when I first got into coaching, actually, it was right when the market crashed, right? 2008. And so all of a sudden I moved from a career that I had built up and was like, oh, look at me. I'm awesome. I'm gonna go do this other thing. And then all of a sudden, I got hit with some economic challenges and things along those lines, stress. I wasn't sleeping as well. I got up to 235 pounds, which is clinically obese for someone who's 6 foot tall. And I also had a ton of aches. I had a lot of inflammation in my body and things along those lines. So I was 45 at the time. And the only reason I'm saying that is today as a 62-year-old, I would say I'm as fit and healthy as any 62-year-old that I know at all.
Dude, you're a beast. You're a beast. Check out, we'll have links to his YouTube videos with him on the beach showing you some exercises. You are in tremendous shape. Shine that light, man. You said,
right. I'm in great shape.
You're in great shape. That is
I'm physically
inspiring.
more capable. I'm physically more capable than I've ever been in my life. And I worked in the fitness industry as a 25-year-old, right? So, at 62, working out 15 minutes a day, it doesn't take everything. The consistency and to have transformed where I was at 235, clinically obese, having a lot of. I remember one time my daughter was 5, I think. She came out into the backyard, and she came out and she was like, "Oh, my freaking knee!" And I was like, your little kid says something, you're like, I shouldn't laugh, but this is kind of funny, right?
Right.
I was like, Sky, sweetheart, you really shouldn't say that. Where'd you even hear that? And she goes like this, like a dog, she tips her head and she's like, your freaking knee, your freaking back, your freaking shoulder. So it puts in me, I'm like, I know that I was running around complaining about physical aches and pains as a 40-year-old. And I don't as a 62-year-old. I know that I had chronic back. I don't want to describe it like it was always there, but every year or two, I would be a couple of days where I could hardly move because my back would just seize up or whatever. And I haven't had any back pain whatsoever. And I'm super flexible. And so I look at it, I'm like, it is not that hard to do. I think one of the biggest disservices that not everyone in the fitness industry, right? I'm not saying everyone's telling the story, but they make it seem like it's so hard. Even the idea, you have to lift heavy. I'm like, okay, what does that actually mean? What does it mean? I don't lift weights. I haven't touched a weight in 15 years. I create resistance internally, fighting my own body, isokinetically. I use gravity. But what does it really mean? Heavy just means that you're challenging your body to do something that's kind of hard for it. It doesn't mean you have to go over and, farmer carry your weight around for,
right.
Again, I think there's all these stories about what you have to do and make it seem like it's so hard. It is not that hard. you can make your body adapt physically and continue to get better and better and better by just challenging yourself on the edges of your capabilities and try to do it as many different ways as possible.
Yeah, I think if we just reframe it, in fact, let's not call it exercise. Let's just call it movement. Because essentially that's all we need to do is just get up and freaking move. I'll say freaking. There you go, Sky.
Yeah,
freaking move. Like let's just get up and move. That's all it takes. A lot of us sit, like myself, I sit at a doggone computer all day long, and I got to be conscious enough to just get up. Thankfully, I drink tons of water and I got to pee every 5 minutes. But at least I'm getting up and walking up and down the stairs. It can be tough, and we need to spend a little bit of time. And like you said, I love how you frame that, like 1% of your day.
Yeah.
The ROI on that, right? 1%,
Monster.
14 point some minutes. That's not that long. I know everybody's got different commitments in life, but you can work in 5, 10, 15 minutes a day just to walk.
You can even do it in parts.
Yeah.
Right? You can even do it in parts. And the other part of it that I think is really important is, like you talked about sitting around. We talked about flow a little bit. So flow, when you're getting flow is rapt attention, right? You can really there's periods of time, 60 to 90 minutes, where you cycle through these processes of focus, and you really need a little period of recovery. When you tap into all those neurochemicals we talked about, it actually is very energy intensive, and you need to go refill up your machine 10 minutes at the end of that 90 minutes or something along those lines. So in those 10 minutes, there's different things you can do. So you could do a 5-minute workout, do some air squats, do a few push-ups, stretch. It doesn't have to be that much. If you were to consistently do 3 of those a day, 15 minutes, while you're working, your performance at work would go up. You'd have greater focus, and you begin to do that. And as you start to reconnect and fall in love with your body and love the way your body, become embodied, you're most likely going to want to go do some other things, right? Because you're going to have this new relationship with your body.
Right. There was this one book, I think it's called Energize. There's 2 authors. One is the sleep doctor, Dr. Bruce. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but yeah, he coined himself the sleep doctor. But anyhow, he talks about just that time period after lunch. Like for me, like 1 to 2 o'clock, man, I am just dead. There's nothing I'm going to do that's going to be worthwhile. But he said to try this one thing and skip. Go out and skip. So I started doing that throughout the office. I have enough space in here that I can just kind of skip around. It seems silly as hell, and it looks silly. I want to capture it on video one day, but I tell you what, it's just like smiling. You get that instant boost of dopamine, right? That hit, and you're like, oh man, I feel alive. I feel awake. And so just little things like that, but so I just wanted to mention that. But
I think
John,
that's great.
we can go on and on. Man, if I need a coach, and I think a lot of times, sometimes you just need help. If you're listening to this, you're like, man, this sounds good. I just don't think I can do this on my own. Reach out, check out John, or there's a ton of, there are a lot of coaches out there. Do your research and find somebody that lines. But if I were to hire a coach again, fortunately, I have a really good high performance coach right now. But John, I would hire you, brother, in a minute, and I would recommend you in a minute because I'm
appreciate that.
So appreciative of the work you've done and continue to do. And that's just it. Like John said, we're not perfect. We're just trying to be 1% better every day, but we're embracing the journey. That's it. I don't see this as something that ends. I'm going to continue to do whatever I need to do to be the best version of myself for me. And you owe that to everybody that you serve, your teammates, your direct reports, your family, your kids, right? Your partners. You owe it to everybody else as well, but you got to do it for yourself, and you got to make that choice. So, John, this has been incredible, man. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, man.
Just a couple of quick hits.
You're doing.
Yeah, thank you. We'll continue to have our conversation. A book a day or a book a week, man. I'm not going to try
I'm a listener now, by the way.
I'm not going to compare myself to you because that's, I'm going to have imposter syndrome on that. But
Audible makes it a lot easier.
It does, right? And you can speed it up. So cheating a little bit, but it's okay, man. I still like the old school book, but that's all right. 2 books that changed your life or that you would recommend for somebody that's thinking about getting into a personal growth journey.
The first book that really impacted my life, and this was a long time ago, but I still find it to be one of the greats, is 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen Covey.
Somebody else, said that on Stephen Covey, man, it's a big one. It's a big one,
Yeah.
but you can go in and out of it.
Yeah, you can go in and out of it, but it really does have you. It was the first introduction that I ever had to paradigms, which is really the concept of
Yeah, right.
perspective, right? It's
Right,
like
right.
how you look at the world impacts what you see.
Mm-hmm.
And so, Stephen Covey was a real pivotal one for me. A lot of my work a lot of what I do today is around creating flow. I have a program called the Flow Cultivator. And so I got exposed to that work. It's Mihai Csikszentmihalyi is the guy that wrote it, the book Flow, but probably the book that if you're going to dive deep into how to create a high flow lifestyle, I would say The Art of Impossible by Stephen Kotler.
Yep. I get his newsletter.
Yeah. That does a really good job of laying out not just how do you find flow, right, which is being at the edge of your capacity, but how do you build a lifestyle of consistently finding that corridor of challenge, skills, balance, and grow forever.
Yeah,
so
and
I
it's
think
beautiful when you do find it. I've found some pockets of it here and there. I'm like, oh, I think I'm in the flow, man. It's just, and for the most part, I'm not in the flow all the time, which gives you a greater appreciation for when you are. But if you can taste that, you're like, oh man.
And if you can understand what it is that gets you there, right? So if you understand that you're in flow when you're at the edge of your capacity without going into overwhelm, when you have clear goals, immediate feedback, you're in the challenge, skills, balance, when you have curiosity, passion, purpose, autonomy, and mastery, there's ingredients. And once you understand the ingredients and you understand how it works, what's going on neurochemically, what are the time frames, you can spend much more time in flow. And then the other thing I'd say is find out how you access flow. Right. So there's different ways. Some people get in through deep thinking, some get in through big risk, some through embodiment, some through what we're doing right now, which is crowd pleasing, right? So communicating in front of people or performing. Find out access points into flow that really work for you and try to get in there as much as possible because it increases your productivity by estimated 500%, according to McKinsey. Increases your learning from 200 to 700% and increases your creativity by 400%. So if you think about I want to create those environments because it's going to take whatever capabilities I have and amp them up. And it's fun, right? It's where you feel your best and perform your best. It's not like, oh, you feel shitty, but you get a good outcome. It's like, no, it's joyful. All the neurochemicals, it's like having the perfect endogenously produced, and so it's really cool. But anyway, this is so much fun. You do a great job, man. You really love the work you're doing, and so grateful to be on your show here today.
Yeah, thanks, John. I appreciate you and everything you're doing. I look forward to just continuing our journey together and our conversations.
Absolutely. Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Bolt Podcast. You're on an inspiring journey of growth, transformation, and joy, and I'm honored to be a part of it. If you found this episode valuable, please share it with your friends, and consider leaving a review. It means the world to us. For show notes, resources, and to subscribe to the weekly Motivational Monday newsletter, please visit toddbirch.com. And don't forget to follow us on social media @TheBolt with Todd B for more inspiration. Remember, real change doesn't happen overnight, folks. Start small, stay consistent, and watch as your growth unfolds. See you next time.